Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hearing. Understanding speech in loud settings is difficult for many of us, but it's especially so for people with higher levels of hearing loss, severe and profound. Even in quieter settings, their needs are different from those of us with lesser degrees. Even I, who can wear an ordinary RIC hearing aid, have seen how much hearing in all kinds of situations have improved in the last few years due to the technological improvements. How much more important is that for people who need a high-power BTE device? To meet that need, GN recently announced the new ReSound Enzo IA, a considerable step up from the previous model Enzo Q. Here to lay out all the improvements that went into the Enzo IA is Laurel Christensen, Chief Audiology Officer at GN. Afterwards, we'll have a few words with the president of GN Hearing Division, Peter Justesen, on their overall direction and efforts to combat hearing loss stigma. Laurel, this is the third time I've had the pleasure of discussing a product launch with you. Thanks for joining me today, and congratulations to you all on the release of the Enzo IA.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's always really fun to talk to you.
Thanks. It's fun to talk to you as well. It's hard actually not to think back to the Vivia launch where Sherry Eberts and I both talked with you together back in January in Las Vegas. Now, to what extent does the Enzo IA leverage the Vivia's improvements, and in what ways is it different?
So, when I start to kind of talk about the new Enzo IA, I always go back to Enzo Q. Superpower hearing aids are not hearing aids that we put out kind of a new one every 2 years. We do, these have a longer life cycle. And so when you put out a new superpower hearing aid, you're usually jumping up onto a new chip, new technology, lots of new signal processing, those kinds of things. So, when you kind of look at the Enzo Q, but of course we're going on to the chip that the Vivia is on and all of that platform that it's based on. So certainly there are a lot of similarities, but then, when you look at a superpower hearing aid, there are a lot of differences, and you have to start by kind of thinking about superpower users, and we're going in a little bit different direction, I think, on a superpower here. I mean, this is a small and rechargeable superpower. So, one of the first things you're going to think is, oh my gosh, superpower users need their hearing aids. Is it going to last long enough? What is the battery life going to be? I mean, that is the first question that HCPs are going to get about this hearing aid, or have about this hearing aid, is, are my superpower users going to be, impressed with this? And, are they ready to make that step into rechargeability? There's only one other superpower that's rechargeable on the market. So, this is a step, and this is a decision that we made, that we are going to take our next superpower into the rechargeable. And it's a really nice product. It's also smaller than Enzo Q. So it's a very small, we say, the world's smallest rechargeable superpower hearing instrument. And I was amazed at what the engineers did, because when you go rechargeable, you tend to have a little bit bigger battery, and it might get bigger. And our goal was to make it smaller with this rechargeable battery. You can imagine how hard it was to get it stable in this small package.
Well, and that's, when you think about superpower, we could go into all kinds of details, right? You've got very high gain, so you must have really fought for being able to support that gain without getting feedback. So that's quite a trick in a small size like that.
Yeah.
Uh, what are the other differences between this one and the Vivia in terms of audiological performance? How did you address the different needs of high power users?
Yeah, so there were four things, and when you look at the superpower user, we didn't want to compromise on several things. So there were four things that we said we will not compromise on these as we develop a new superpower. So one of those was hearing and noise. The most important thing. Let's give them better hearing and noise than you'd get in an Enzo Q, and we definitely did that. Then we said we have to be able to get the gain that we are getting out of Enzo Q. There's no doubt, that we have the most gain and a superpower in the industry. It's because of our feedback, and we can get 26 dB of gain before, headroom essentially. So gain before feedback when we turn on our feedback manager. Nobody else can do that, and we do it with no gain reduction, whatsoever. So gain, you have to give really good audibility. You've got to provide all the audibility needed, and then you can turn on your directional microphones. But without the audibility first, you're not going to understand speech and noise. And you have to have the audibility and then the improvement in signal to noise ratio. So gain was not something we could compromise on. We also already mentioned could not compromise on battery life. We have 28 hours, 20 hours if you stream half the time. So the battery life is great. And then we were going to put Auracast in here. This is the population where I believe Auracast is going to be great for everybody in the whole world. But this is the population where Auracast makes an amazing difference. This is the population that's using telecoil today. And telecoil and Auracast in sound quality, they don't even compare. Auracast is just really the way to go. So those were the four things we were not going to compromise on. So we have all the directionality, all the signal to noise ratio benefit of a Vivia, and Vivia also has great gain. What we don't have in here is the deep neural network noise reduction. We have a lot of other AI, because of course our environmental classification and our feedback control all are based on machine learning, but we do not have DNN in here, and that was a very conscious choice. We were not going to be able to get 28 hours of battery life, and we were not going to compromise battery life because we knew that a superpower user, we could not compromise on battery life for a superpower user. So we do not have that deep neural network noise reduction. It would have taken a couple more years to get this product out if we would have put that in there, because we would have had to wait for battery technology to go a little bit further. And so, certainly DNN has its place, but it is not the reason why signal to noise ratio gets improved in hearing aids today. It's still the directional microphones. So the biggest upgrade into the Vivia technology, as you ask, is really the directionality, moving to clear focus in our hearing and noise program. Those are the biggest signal processing upgrades.
Okay. And so, yeah, really in the beginning, you talked about gain, and I'm assuming then that means you're going to get better performance in quiet settings when you're maxing out the gain, correct?
Yeah, I mean, when you move up to the new chip and all of the gain, the sound quality of this hearing aid is really good. You're going to get all of the gain that you need for a superpower user. So all of those things are, of course, improved. But we also, we have a reputation with all those Enzo products that came before. We just can provide the gain without feedback, and this is really something that no other company can do. We really provide this gain before feedback. We don't do gain reduction. Many companies will calibrate the feedback manager, and they just make sure that the gain is below that, and they provide almost no headroom when they turn on their feedback manager. It just keeps it from whistling. I mean, we allow you to fit way, way, way into into areas that you would think that you would get a lot of feedback. But our feedback cancellation is, it is very good. We have a static canceller that just puts the reverse filter in, and then we have a more dynamic canceller for if you're touching your hearing aid, and it works really quickly. So it handles those, touching or putting on a hat. It handles that feedback really quickly. It takes it away. So, that kind of feedback control without gain reduction is kind of one of our claims to fame. And yeah, you asked about the challenges. We wanted to keep this in a smaller superpower aid. Superpower hearing aids are larger, but we wanted to make this smaller, but make it rechargeable, and stability, getting it very, very stable. That's the biggest challenge for any superpower. And this definitely was the biggest challenge in developing it for the engineers.
Okay. Okay. And when you talk about noisy settings, then you've got a pretty narrow beamformer. Is it the same beamformer in the Vivia, or is it something different?
Nope, it is the same one. Same one. And we have the philosophy that we don't want the beam, both hearing aids to go directional in most settings because, people, and especially superpower users, they don't want to be cut off from their environment. Nobody wants to be completely cut off from their environment and only hear what's in a beam in front of them. And so our philosophy has always been 360-degree sound around you. And it's a huge upgrade from Enzo Q into our automatic program. That automatic program works the same in Vivia as it does in Enzo Q. What is a little bit different is when you go to the hearing and noise program. If you're in a Vivia 9, when you go to the hearing and noise program, you get our deep neural network denoising. When you go to the hearing and noise program for our superpower, you get a new beamformer called Clear Focus, and it provides about 3 dB more signal to noise ratio improvement over Enzo Q. So we really did meet that goal of really taking hearing and noise to a better place for these users.
Okay, so I would probably choose that one in one-on-one situations more so than when there are things going around me where then I want to run what I'm assuming is highly directional on one side and less directional on the other. So I have my
Yeah,
choice essentially. Is that correct?
that's correct, because in the automatic program, we steer it all. You really don't need to go to the hearing and noise program that often. But if you get into a situation where, wow, I cannot hear this person talking, going to the hearing and noise program will take out it'll take out that much more noise to provide about 3 dB more in signals noise ratio improvement. So it's a nice improvement. I work with a guy who has been testing Enzo, and I asked him the other day, how often do you switch to program 2? And he said, almost never. He said, I get everything automatically out of program 1, and I really don't need program 2. So, and he really is a candidate for these kinds of superpower hearing aids.
Well, and that's really one of the things about hearing aid technology in general, and that is the scene classification has gotten so much better. I mean, my original hearing aids when I was first fitted in 2018, I was manually switching programs and customizing things more often to get it just so. I hardly ever do that anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's interesting because there were some very independent studies done looking at classifiers. And what those studies found was that if a hearing aid was trying to classify music, it often got hearing and noise wrong. So, so think about this. You go into a restaurant, there's background music playing. You're not there really to hear that music. You're there to chat. You're there to talk to the people and have a good night with other people that you came to the restaurant. Often hearing aids will put that as a music program. And then you're left there as a hearing aid user going, oh my gosh, this thing's classifying it as a music program. It ups the bass, it turns all the directional off, it does the exact opposite thing you need for a noise.
right.
Then you really do need a hearing and noise program, because if it classifies it wrong in the automatic program, switching over to the hearing and noise program becomes absolutely crucial for people. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to make sure that we classify correctly. We don't classify music. We've set up a separate music program because we've known for many years that if you try to classify music, you're going to probably not have it set up for hearing and noise often in the right way. So all of these systems are getting better over time, but yeah, music classification is still a problem.
Yeah, no, and I love the music setting you can get now. I mix at our church, and it's the only way. If I don't use the music setting, then what I'm hearing isn't necessarily what everybody else is hearing. But the music setting takes care of that, and of course, that makes music listening more enjoyable
For sure.
generally.
And when you have people who are, music connoisseurs, and, I don't fit too many hearing aids anymore. I have a fantastic team of audiologists. But when I do, I actually will let that person just set it up like an equalizer themselves. Play music, here you go. I'll teach you how to change the frequency response, and you set up your own music program. And, and there, that's always worked over the years. It's much better than probably anything, because people have different tastes in music. I mean, I rode in the car with my 17-year-old the other day, and I don't have that taste in music. And the bass was,
Well,
it's definitely not how I would set my music up.
well, I was laughing because, yeah, especially streaming music, the first thing I do is grab that equalizer and put the bass all the way up because, of course, with a hearing aid receiver, you're not getting it.
Exactly.
So,
Not if it's open for sure.
but I have a question for you on the beamformer because now you're going very narrow, and I've seen, devices where if you go very narrow beamforming, it can get a little bit kind of chirpy and unnatural, especially on the fringes. I mean, how natural does this one sound, and how are you, when you go narrow beamforming, improving the comfort level of the whole scene?
Yeah, it's very natural. You will not know it changed. And that's been perfected over a lot of years. Our head of research, Andrew Dipburner, did a lot of research at Walter Reed with Brian Walden many years back, and found that people would prefer one hearing aid to be directional and one hearing aid to be omni in most environments in noise. And they did this with a lot of veterans, and they wrote down every single place they were and whether or not they liked program 1, 2, and 3, and those were set up very counterbalanced, but they were always choosing this one where directional, they were getting the benefit of the directional microphones. You don't need to do that, and then they were hearing everything else around. When our automatic program, essentially when the noise gets above 65 dB SPL, we will go asymmetric. We turn on the directional microphone on the side with the most noise. If it's completely diffuse and equal, we'll put the directional microphone on the right ear to take advantage of the right ear advantage. But otherwise, we have that monitor ear, hearing everything else. And it's so sophisticated today that we even, on the directional side, will pick up the sound that would kind of be dead over here, and we actually stream it to the monitor ear, so that you're
Oh,
getting,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
you're getting 360 degrees in your monitor ear, and it's just completely seamless. We also keep the low frequencies in the directional microphone omni, the very lowest ones, so that you don't hear this sound quality difference between the monitor ear that is omni and the directional ear. And so it's just very natural. You don't even know that it turns on. And the same goes when the second mic will turn on, which it will turn on if all of the noise is in the back and the speech is in the front. We will give you that kind of 1 dB extra there. But otherwise, we just want people to be able to hear. And we even do a weighted approach to our beamformer, where we take in less into our beamformer on the side with the most noise, so that we're taking in a cleaner signal. So we really have some very sophisticated beamforming. Our beamformer is about 9 dB SNR improvement today. So
Okay.
it's huge. And a two, if you're not using a 4 microphone beamformer that's using ear-to-ear communication, a 2 mic system, 3 to 4 dB, and then you can get up to 9 dB on these beamformers today. So it's a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly a lot of thoughts gone into it. And of course, for a person with profound hearing loss, their last line of defense is always to clip a multi-mic on somebody.
Of course. And that's the beauty of, that's the beauty of the accessories. I mean, this severe to profound group, this is where you talk accessories on appointment number one. I mean, it's the difference between hearing and not hearing in many situations for people with severe to profound. And it's so easy, and our multi-mic, because it has a line in, so many patients use that in the airplane. Severe to profound users can't put on a pair of headphones in an airplane and actually get a movie while they're traveling. And so if you can plug the multi-mic in and use your superpower hearing aids, on an airplane with just the line in function there. So, and then it's a mic, it can be a telecoil, it can be anything. So, I mean, these are things you just don't let superpower users leave without, and the TV streamer as well. Although there are TVs today with Auracast, so sometimes you won't need that TV
You
streamer,
won't
but you
need the
still
TV
have
streamer
Auracast.
anymore. Yeah,
Yep,
actually one of the tricks I'm surprised more people don't do is the mic works really good with other assistive listening systems. So for example, if you go somewhere with an FM system, you can plug the mic into the FM system and just set it down on the seat next to you.
it's perfect. Yeah, there are so many uses for that multi-mic, and this is the population where that it's used for everything. So it's nice to have all the accessories. And then, then I was talking to a superpower user just yesterday about Auracast, and he got to experience in the UK some Auracast, and he talked about it bringing a tear to his eyes. He couldn't believe how great it is. That was that fourth thing that we would not compromise on here. I mean, this is the group that needs Auracast now, today. And so we wanted to be able to bring that as well. So there's a lot of power being used in these hearing aids with those compromises. So, that's what we had to really think about. If we're going to go rechargeable, and what are the things, what is that set that we can do now without waiting 2 more years? What is that set that we can do for a superpower user so that we can have that all day battery life? And so I think we're in a really good place. Our clinical trials have gone extremely well on this product. People love it. We had a woman in the UK who works for the National Health Services who's been profoundly impaired since age 4. And she used it and said, she's just never had the ability to hear a noise today that she's getting now with this. So it's nice to see. We love, and this is definitely the population you really, really enjoy making a difference for.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's what, 5 years difference between the Q and the IA, so it
Yep.
means a lot. And I
It's
want to
a
ask you, because we talked about Auracast already, but I noticed that the IA can connect to two different devices simultaneously.
Yeah,
Uh,
it will be a gift to have that, because it's just, you really need to be able to, there's a lot of people who need to be able to connect to more than one thing. And that's, those are a few things that maybe Bluetooth Classic provided that Bluetooth, low energy audio hadn't yet provided. It's just kind of one of those steps. Eventually, Bluetooth low energy audio is, of course, the way to go, especially with the broadcast audio and Auracast.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think as it comes universally to other devices, then yeah, eventually LE will take over. But I want to talk about CI compatibility too, because this is the population where you're going to have a higher percentage of people wearing a CI on one side and a hearing aid on the other side. And so you have the collaboration with Cochlear. Exactly how does that work and what functionality do you get when you have a CI and an Enzo IA?
Yeah, so we have this great collaboration with Cochlear, and you can wear this bimodally, but not with this. Or you can be bimodal with Cochlear, but not with this Enzo IA. You have to be bimodal with Nexia still today. That won't always be the case. We're working on the next big thing with Cochlear, but it is not going. This product will not be bimodally compatible, because we will have that coming forward in another product. So we're working on some things with them, and have made a joint agreement with Cochlear and us that this product won't be bimodal to make way for the next thing that will come out.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for explaining that. And looking forward to seeing how that comes next for people who, want to go bimodal.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And I mean, we have a huge commitment to bimodal. So, and that is what we're working with Cochlear on. So it is something we will absolutely be doing, but this particular product will not be bimodally compatible.
okay. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So I think we've covered everything. It's been a great conversation as always.
Yeah.
Anything else to add before?
I don't think so. I can't wait to get feedback from end users once we get it out there on the market.
Well, I'm happy to say I won't be one of those. I'm just not at that level, fortunately.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's definitely a different user. You really have to plan and think a lot differently for them. But again, for us developing hearing aids, there's no population we want to help more than this population. So we're glad to have this one come into the market.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you think about all of the comorbidities that come with hearing loss and just even down to the basic, social isolation, for example. So anything that
Absolutely.
can be done in the high power arena to help people be able to socialize more is
Yeah.
huge. So
And
congratulations
one
again on.
I always just say one really interesting thing is when that Lancet report came out on cognitive decline just last July, one of the one of the things in there was it's not just enough to solve the audibility problem, but actual hearing and noise. And your ability to hear noise has a lot to do with this connection between cognition and hearing loss. And so, doing everything you can for people with the best beamformers, the accessories, all of that for this population, it's even more important in light of all of the research that came out from Lancet.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, congratulations again for releasing this one, and I appreciate you spending some time with me.
Yep, thank you, and thanks for the invite again.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now I'm happy to welcome Peter Justesen and congratulate him for being named president of GN's Hearing Division. Congratulations, Peter.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it.
It's actually a bit of a trend because right before your predecessor assumed the presidency, I interviewed him at the GN stand at OIHA. So now I get to do the same for you right after you assume the role. You've actually had a wide and varied career at GN. You've had leadership roles in a number of different disciplines.
Yeah.
Please tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how that experience informed your approach to hearing health.
Yes, you're right. I've been in GN for some time, 13 years, which is quite a while, and it's been a fantastic journey for me. I've really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it tremendously. I joined GN a little bit by a coincidence because I knew some people that worked here and that I worked with in the past. So joining here was quite by accident, but I've been very intentional and purposeful about staying here because I think what we do in GN Hearing is really, really cool and interesting and profound. We help people hear better and have better lives. I think that mission has absolutely got under my skin. I really enjoy what we're doing. My first career was in law. I was a lawyer, and that's also what brought me to GN, law and investment banking. I worked in our M&A department in the beginning, and then after that, our strategy and business development department. And then slowly I sort of got a little bit more into the business. First, a brief stay or 3-year stay in investor relations, talking to our investors and analysts, and then into product management, global key accounts, and then into the sales part of the business. And as you mentioned, just recently I took over the overall responsibility for GN Hearing, which I'm very happy about.
Well, I love the part where you said it got under your skin because both having been in the industry for a dozen years or so and also a hearing impaired person myself, I get to see both sides of it and I get to see the life and experience the life-changing difference that modern devices make. So I love that passion when I find it in people.
And I will say the reason why I maybe say it like that is, I mean, we obviously have, which I think is probably the most important thing for me to nurture. We have, I think, a fantastic team of passionate experts in GN Hearing. And some of them come from audiology. Some of them have parents that are audiologists or have worked in the industry for sometimes a number of generations. I'm not that lucky. I just come from a legal background family. But I can remember, quite sort of surprised by how big of an impact the hearing aid industry made on me. I remember clearly, even though it was 13 years back, it wasn't necessarily like I planned to be here for 13 years, but I just absolutely fell in love with what we do. I think it is very important and very cool.
I love that. I really love that. And that comes out with the Enzo IA as well, because when you talk about people with profound hearing loss, they need help more than anybody.
Yes.
And that's actually, it's quite a leap from the earlier Enzo Q. And I found it interesting because that one, the Enzo IA, is launched only 7 months after the Vivia, and the Vivia followed the Nexia by barely over a year. So you've had 3 major releases in a little less than 2 years. Now, is that just timing, or does that actually reflect a deliberate decision to accelerate development cycles and take advantage of newer technologies?
You know, when you want to be an innovation leader in the industry, one of the most, and be an innovation leader because you want to make the biggest difference in your user's life, not just for the sake of innovation itself, you really want to go to market as soon as you can. And sometimes you have an opportunity to be a little bit faster, perhaps, than you predicted, and then you just want to do that because that's how you help your users the most. It's also how you become even more competitive as a company. And you're right; those launches have been quite close in between. It's normally a little bit closer than we normally plan. But at the same time, we didn't want to keep back our technology. We made huge leaps forward, I think, with Vivia and now Enzo as well. And for us, we just simply want to make sure that we can have the biggest impact in the market and for our users as we possibly can.
Well, and now that the Enzo IA has really, over its predecessor, moved into the modern technology, you've got what I would call the classical hearing aid range well in hand between Vivia and IA. What about the range below that? For example, there's a lot of talk these days about people with either mild hearing loss or unmeasurable audiological hearing loss, but who still struggle, particularly in noise. I mean, how do you see leveraging the technology you've developed to serve those markets?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we have managed to really improve our, let's say, entire portfolio, or I should say classical portfolio, also with the Enzo IA. And one of the really cool things for me about Enzo IA is it allows us to have current breakthrough technology in the market for superpower users. As you know, in the past, sometimes superpower users have had to wait a little bit to get the most advanced technology available in the market simply because it was not in superpower hearing aids.
Right.
But now that's no longer the case. I think that in itself is one of the things that we're very happy with. And then you're right. I mean, in the other end, sort of the range, then people with severe to profound hearing loss is people with that need just a little bit of help hearing. And that's certainly also an interesting area for us as an industry also. But I think equally so, it's also interesting in the context of making sure that we do a good job of educating the world around us about the importance of good hearing health. And many of those people that just need a little bit of an occasional help might eventually become real hearing aid users. And certainly also in parallel with that, it's all about having a conversation around hearing health. Also when you don't need hearing aids to the same extent you do when you are, for example, a superpower user. So obviously for us and for the industry, that's also an interesting space. And you can also see that in many sort of hybrid-like devices, hearing and hearing health is now a real theme, which I think is fantastic, that it opens up, I was going to say eyes, but maybe eyes and ears of the entire world around us, that taking good care of your hearing and making sure that you have the help you need is noticed and perceived to be important.
Yeah, quite so, really. Like I think of a couple of the studies. Let's see, Dr. Beck and Brent Edwards both published separate papers on hidden hearing loss, and they identified about 25 million Americans who have trouble in difficult situations, but are fine and quiet. And if you globalize that, that's like 500 million people.
Yep.
So all the conversations that get those people to start thinking about hearing health, I think are really important, because you say they need a little bit of help, but where they really need help typically is in social situations. So the personal and societal impact is greater than just needing a little help, because if it causes social withdrawal, then it becomes a much bigger health and wellness issue. And of course, GN's putting a lot of effort into breaking down stigma and helping to normalize that. So I've always appreciated that part of what GN does very much.
Yeah, that's probably also why it got me to thinking. And when you talk about the other parts of the, let's say, hearing health world than, for example, superpowers, is that's really what we are passionate about, making sure that as a whole that we talk about and promote the importance of hearing health. Also that we somehow combat the stigma a little bit. I think it's still one of the disciplines within, let's say, human health and welfare that maybe is a little bit less noticed in general. I think all other parts of our body and our health is something that people take great care of and understand the importance of. But maybe for hearing health, we still have a little bit of work to do to make sure that people understand that there are options for those that need it. And it's not just, I totally agree, it's not just a little bit about having some hearing help, because the wider topics are, as you say, sort of being able to be socially engaged, to have a nice social life, and for that matter also, as you also know, the impact of good hearing when it comes to, for example, cognitive decline and so forth. So I think hearing health is tremendously important. It's not just a cost for the individual, but also not just a cost for a country or a society. There's also a huge investment in it that has very, very profound benefits for the people involved. And then I mean, I had a feeling we would be talking a little bit about the promotion of hearing health and stigma and so forth. And I brought this from my office. It's a Danish Lego block. You won't be able to see, but it's wearing hearing aids.
I see it.
I think it's just a small signal of hearing aids sort of popping up in places where you wouldn't expect them. And as you might have seen, we also done other cooperations and collaborations where we kind of put hearing aids in places where you wouldn't expect to see them, but they also become a little bit more natural then, and perhaps a little bit less stigmatized when you see them in unexpected places as part of normal life.
Well, yeah, that's right. And the New Norm campaign really shows that, but also the Han Copenhagen fashion show.
Yes.
And so with all those efforts throughout the industry, are you optimistic that there's going to be serious inroads made in stigma, that people will see addressing their hearing as normal as addressing their vision? And if you are, like, over what time period do you think that'll actually happen?
That's a very good question. I absolutely think that we will see an increase in penetration. I don't think it will be dramatic overnight. That's just not the nature of what we're doing of the industry. But I absolutely think that as awareness increases from many different aspects, and also as we get help, I would say, as an industry from other players outside of our normal industry, but just awareness in general. And for example, a little bit of help from stuff like this, I do think that penetration will go up, and that will allow us to help even more people than we do today.
So I love that Lego actually did that. I know you haven't worked with them in any way. It was them on their own that chose to do that. And I think that's actually more powerful. It means that message of normalization is getting through. And you know how the people are doing online these employee badges that reflect who they are. Well, I noticed that Lego allows you to make custom figurines, and I'm going to have one made that looks like me with a hearing aid on it. And that'll be my calling card, is a custom Lego. So no, I think that's a really great sign that you start to see this throughout society and just being recognized as part of life like any other. So that's fantastic. And that's how I'll close my thoughts. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, thank you, Andy. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about something that's incredibly important to GN Hearing and to me. I think obviously we talked about technology as one of the ways where we can promote the agenda and the importance of hearing health. And I'm really proud of what we have achieved as a company over the last couple of years in terms of upgrading our products and making sure that different users with different needs have a good place to go in GN Hearing in order for them to have the help they need and deserve to have the best possible life. I think that is incredibly powerful and important.
It is powerful and important, and I appreciate both your passion and the passion of others I've talked to at GN who are really dedicated to making people's lives better through hearing care. So thank you for that. And thank you for spending some time with me.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. And thanks to everyone for watching or listening to this episode of This Week in Hearing.